Hello, welcome back to the channel, and this is a channel where we give you reviews, playthroughs, unboxings, and we generally like to talk a load of bollocks about tabletop gaming in general. And in this video we're going to be talking about a game that is 10 years old that was designed by Vital Lacerda. We're going to be talking about CO2, and this is the first edition of this game, not to be confused with the more recent CO2 Second Chance. And in this game you will be building green power plants, sending scientists off to summits in a desperate attempt to avert Armageddon and save the world from catastrophe. So in this video we're going to be giving you a very brief overview of the rules. We'll be telling you what we do like, what we don't like, and we'll come back and we'll tell you whether or not CO2 is still worth playing 10 years after its first release in 2013. So remember, if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel, hit the like button and all that YouTube bullshit. See you after this. Bollocks! So, CO2, how'd you play this game? So CO2 is sort of like a semi-cooperative, competitive game, right? You'll be working together to stop the carbon dioxide levels going over 500. If that happens, then the world basically blows up and it's game over. This game takes place over a certain number of rounds, depending on how many players that are playing the game. And it takes place over a couple of phases. The first phase is the supply phase. And the first thing you'll do in the supply phase is you will distribute income. You will look at the expertise tracks. And if you are first or second on the expertise track, then you will get a certain amount of credits. You'll be able to take these credits as either victory points or money, right? Next thing you'll be able to do, you'll be able to supply energy. You look at the relevant space in each region that corresponds to the round you're in. So if you're in round 2, you look at the second space, and if it's empty, then you'll have to dump a fossil fuel power plant in that space, right? The region will have to pay one of its CEPs. These are carbon emission permits, and if there's any white cubes in that region, then it'll have to spend one as well, right? Once you've done that, you'll look at the amount of carbon that fossil fuel power plant produces, and you'll raise the carbon level accordingly, right? Remember, if it goes over 500, then basically you're toast. So the third thing you'll do in the supply phase is you'll resolve the event. You'll look at the card that's at the bottom of the board. If you're below 350 CO2, nothing happens, but if you're over that, then a cataclysmic event will happen in that region. If you don't have a green power plant in that region, you will have to pay 1 cube. If you don't have any cubes, you will have to sacrifice 2 victory points. So once you have taken care of the supply phase, you'll move on to the operations phase. This is where players will take actions. You'll be required to take 1 action per turn, and there's also 3 free actions that you can take, but you can only take each of these 3 actions once. So the first action you can do is you can propose a project. You'll choose a project from the supply and you will place it in a region, taking the grant that is associated with the space you put it on. You might be able to get a scientist, you might be able to get a couple of cubes, or you might be able to get some money. The only thing you've got to be mindful of is that each region has a preference to which type of energy they want to produce. So you can't go sticking a nuclear power station in a region that only wants solar power, right? Next thing you can do is you can install a project. You'll pay 1 CEP from your hand. You'll flip the tile and you'll take a benefit. So if you decided to install the solar farm that you proposed in the previous round, then you'll get a load of resource cubes, right? So the final main action you can take is you can construct a green power plant. You'll look at the installed projects that are in each region. You'll choose one of them and you'll remove it from the board. If there's an opponent scientist on there, you'll have to pay that person $1 to remove it, and then you'll put a power plant that corresponds to that project on the space below it. You'll have to pay for this. You'll have to pay cash and resource cubes, but you'll get a load of victory points for doing this, and you'll also be able to move up on the relevant expertise track, maybe triggering a bonus or 2. So if you've got the majority of power plants in a region, you will stick your disc on that region, and this means that you'll have a few benefits. You'll be able to use the CEPs of those regions, and if you've still got control of that region at the end of the game, you'll be able to get those CEPs, cash them in for victory points. So the 3 actions that you can take. You can take a card action. You'll be able to fulfill one of the UN achievements. You'll do this by having power plants on the board that correspond to the symbols that are on the UN cards. You'll take the card and you'll get the victory points. You'll also be able to play a lobby card. You'll be able to take a main action, getting a benefit for it, or you'll be able to cash it in for a secondary benefit, which might be like a cube or getting a new scientist. So you'll also be able to visit the market. You can buy CEPs from the market. Once you've done that, you'll raise the price, or you could sell CEPs to the market, in which case you will lower the price. once you have sold your shit. And then you'll be able to use your scientists. You can take a scientist from your hand and put them on a project. You can take a scientist from a project and move them to another project, or you can take a scientist from a project and stick them on a summit. Once all of the icons on the summit tile are full of scientists, you'll be able to resolve that summit. Each player will move up on the respective achievement track, and then each player will also get to move up on another track, maybe the one that you're on, or maybe the one that your opponents are on. And then finally, on your turn, you will look at the board, you'll see if you've got any scientists on the projects, and then you'll be able to move up on an expertise track where you have got a scientist. So you'll keep doing this, you'll do this for a certain number of rounds, you'll keep proposing, you'll keep installing, you'll keep constructing, and at the end of the specified number of rounds, say in a 5-player game you'll play 6 rounds, you'll do a bit of final scoring, you'll cash in all the CEPs of the areas where you have control, you'll add your money to this and you'll divide it by 2, you'll get that many victory points. The player with the most resource cubes will get 3 victory points, and the player with the most UN cards will get 3 victory points, and then the player with the most points will be the winner of CO2. So what do we like about CO2? So the first thing that we really like about this game is that the theme links well with the mechanics, right? If you think about the way that you place your scientists on the summit tiles, this sort of means that scientists from different companies are coming together to share their knowledge to increase their expertise. And I know it's just like little wooden pawns on a board with discs and all that sort of thing, but I think Vital Lacerda has been quite clever in the way that he has tried to anchor the theme down in the mechanics, right? And that's what you want in a board game. You want to feel like what you're doing on the board sort of mimics things in reality. So the next thing that we like about this is the way that the semi-cooperative nature provides a counterpoint to the economic facets of the game, right? For instance, the game is all about getting as much cash as you can by the end of the game so you can convert it into victory points, but you've always got a sense of impending doom hanging over you. If you don't take care of those CO2 emissions and you concentrate on generating as much capital as possible, then you're not going to last very long and you're going to take everyone down with you, right? So in order to win this game, there is a careful trade-off between letting the world go to rat shit and lining your pockets full of wad. So the next thing I like about this is the way that you can leech off of other players. One of the highlights of the game for us is that when you propose or install a project, they don't actually belong to you. They only belong to you when you construct a power station, right? So you know you're going to have to propose and install these projects, but in doing so, you're handing keys to your Lamborghini to your opponents, right? You might propose a nuclear power station, somebody comes in, steals it from under your nose, then your Aunt Mabel comes in, turns it into victory points just because they had cubes and you didn't. You've always got to be watching your back. You've always got to be mindful about when you pull the trigger on these projects because there's a lot of sneaky bastards out there. So the final thing that we like about this is the way that you get to chain together 3 actions. You might want to move a scientist onto a project, then you might want to install that project, throw your scientist off, send them to a summit or move them somewhere else, or you might want to play a lobby card that will allow you to do a specific action with a bonus. That bonus will allow you to do something else, so you're going to have to buy some CEPs to pay for it. And it's just pretty decent the way that the 3 actions, in a sense, are more powerful than the actual main actions you're going to be taking. So what don't we like about CO2? So the first thing that we don't like about this game is that the components seem a little bit too abstract in my opinion. Look, you know, we said earlier that the theme is quite well connected to the mechanics. Well, that's all well and good, but when you've got purple discs representing permits and you've got bog standard white cubes representing technology, then there's a certain disconnect between what you are looking at and what you're trying to do in your head. I know this has probably been rectified in the second chance edition of this. I haven't actually looked at that. I ain't paying 100 quid for this game. Right, you can if you want to, but I'd rather eat food and put my heating on, contributing to carbon emissions. But at the end of the day, the game looks like a fucking pile of dog shit, doesn't it? I mean, the artwork isn't that great. It looks like a 5-year-old's watercolour, or it looks like somebody's puked in a bath. So they could have done better with the components. It just seems like they've just gone to Amazon and thrown some random looking components in a box, right? So the next thing that we don't like about CO2 is that there doesn't appear to be enough turns at higher player counts. If you're playing with 4 or 5 players, you're not really going to be getting enough turns per round to make much of an impact, you know. I mean, in a 5-player game, you get 2 turns per round. That means you might be able to propose and install a project. You're not going to have that 3rd turn to build it, right? So you're always going to be on the back foot at a higher player count game. And as such, that creates some unnecessary frustration with this one. So the next thing we don't like about this is that towards the end of the game, if somebody is quite a long way behind, then they could act as kingmaker by implementing a scorched earth policy. If somebody realises that there's no chance of them winning in the 5th round or the 4th round, then they could deliberately refuse to build that power station that would prevent climate Armageddon. So they sit on their resources and the world suffocates in its own feces, all because someone didn't want another person to win, right? There's not really anything you can do about it either, because if that happens, the world ends and it's game over for everybody. So the final thing that we don't like about this game is that the theming, at the end of the day, it's pretty fucking bleak, innit? It's not as bleak as This War of Mine. It doesn't make you want to dig out your VHS copy of Threads and watch that on repeat, right? But climate change isn't a particularly pleasant thing to think about, is it really? I sort of play board games to try and forget about this bullshit. I don't really enjoy having the face of Greta Thunberg implanted in my mind's eye for 3 hours on my day off.
How dare you!
It's not really a theme that makes me want to tap dance around my living room. And really, this theme made me a little bit depressed, really. I wasn't crying into my pillow or anything, but it just felt like it was a little bit futile. So to summarise, is CO2 worth your time and bother today and in the future? So we're going to say not quite. Well, no, really. This game is an admirable attempt at framing an important contemporary issue into a board game. It accurately highlights the hypocrisy of capitalism by juggling Armageddon prevention with rampant wealth accumulation. The components are like strangely abstract for such a strongly themed game, and it can suffer from kingmaker syndrome towards the end of the game if the conditions aren't ideal. The sad fact is that there are so many better economic games out there, and really CO2 should really only ignite your interest if you are interested in this rather unique theme, right? So there you go, that is CO2. Remember, if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel, hit the like button and all that YouTube bullshit. We'll see you next time.